Today on The Secret Sits, we are going to explore one of the most noteworthy mass shootings in the United States of America. And the reason I'm saying noteworthy is because this was also one of the first widely reported mass shootings in a time when everyone felt they still lived in a relatively safe and civilized society. But then, just like all of our stories, there is a secret. And this secret may have actually been buried in the physical brain of Charles Joseph Whitman. Charles Joseph Whitman grew up in Lake Worth, Florida, which is near the bottom of the Florida Peninsula, close to Miami. As the eldest of three sons of an overbearing plumbing contractor father and a devout Roman Catholic mother, Whitman's father, a perfectionist, apparently was never satisfied with his son's accomplishments, no matter how impressive, including early mastering of the piano and becoming one of the youngest Eagle Scouts in Boy Scouting history. The older Whitman, a fervid gun lover, did, however, take great pride in the expert marksmanship of his eldest son, who was taught from a very early age how to shoot. When Whitman was 14 and still serving as an altar boy, his scout leader, Joseph Ledoux, completed seminary and served as the priest of Sacred Heart Catholic Church for a month. Ledoux, later a confidant of Whitman's, was a family friend who had accompanied Whitman and his father on several hunting trips. At the age of 16, Whitman underwent a routine appendectomy and was hospitalized following a motorcycle accident. Whitman, like his mother, who was physically abused by her husband, suffered greatly under his domineering and explosive father. Anxious to get away from him, Whitman, who had a high IQ but a checkered academic record in high school, chose his escape route, not college, but the Marine Corps, in which he enlisted in July 1959. After qualifying as a sharpshooter in boot camp, he served an 18-month stint at Guantanamo Bay Naval Base in Cuba, where he earned an appointment to officer training school in Bainbridge, Maryland. There, he distinguished himself enough to earn a military scholarship to study mechanical engineering at the University of Texas while still on active duty in September of 1961. In Austin, he met and married another student, Kathleen Leisner. His hobbies at this point included karate, scuba diving, and hunting. This last hobby got him into trouble at the university when he was involved in what the college deemed a teenage prank, in which he shot a deer, dragged it to his dormitory, and skinned it in his shower. As a result of both this incident and substandard grades, Whitman's scholarship was withdrawn in 1963. The following year, he returned to active duty with the Marines at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, where he was both promoted to Lance Corporal and was soon involved in an accident in which his Jeep rolled over an embankment. After rescuing his pinned comrade, Whitman was hospitalized for 4 days. That November, Whitman was court-martialed for gambling, possessing a personal firearm on base, and threatening another Marine over a $30 loan for which Whitman demanded $15 in interest. He was sentenced to 30 days of confinement and 90 days of hard labor and was demoted to the rank of private. Now, for those of you who do not know, being demoted in the military can be common as a form of punishment, but to be bumped down all the way to private is pretty bad. In December of 1964, Whitman was honorably discharged from the Marines and returned to the University of Texas, this time enrolling in its architectural engineering program. Now lacking his scholarship, Whitman worked first as a bill collector for the Standard Finance Company and later as a bank teller at Austin National Bank. So when I was in college, I worked 3 jobs at a time, all the while attending classes and also keeping up with all of my theater projects. And it is difficult no matter how much you have your life together, which Whitman did not. By 1965, he had taken a temporary job with Central Freight Lines and worked as a traffic surveyor for the Texas Highway Department. He also volunteered as a scoutmaster for Austin Scout Troop 5, while Kathy worked as a biology teacher at Lanier High School. Now, the Whitman family had a long history of dysfunctionality. By 1966, Whitman's mother, Margaret, had announced she was divorcing his father. Whitman drove to Florida to help his mother move to Austin, Texas, where she found work in a cafeteria. The move prompted his youngest brother, John, to move out as well. Meanwhile, his brother Patrick decided to continue living with their father, whose plumbing business employed him. Whitman's father began to telephone Whitman several times a week, pleading with him to convince his mother to give the marriage another try, but Whitman refused. In 1966, Whitman discussed his depression with the university's doctor, Jan Cochran, who prescribed Valium and recommended he visit campus psychiatrist Maurice Dean Heatley. On March 29, 1966, Whitman met with Heatley and spent an hour explaining his frustrations with his parents' separation and his increasing strains at work and school. During the interview, he made a remark about feeling the urge to start shooting people with a deer rifle from the university tower. Heatley noted that Whitman was oozing with hostility, yet he never returned for more treatment. Whitman mentioned the visit with Heatley in his final suicide notes, saying it was to no avail. By the summer, Whitman was prescribed Dexedrine, a drug prescribed for ADHD. Although Whitman had been prescribed these drugs, his autopsy could not establish if he had consumed any prior to the attacks. However, it was revealed during the autopsy that Whitman had a cancerous glioblastoma tumor in the hypothalamus region of his brain. Some have theorized that it may have been pressed against the nearby amygdala, which can affect a mode of passion. This has led some neurologists to speculate that his medical condition may in some way have been responsible for these attacks. Father Ledoux met with Whitman for the last time 2 months prior to the shootings and said that Whitman had confided that he had lost his faith and no longer considered himself a practicing Catholic. After the attacks, a study of Whitman's journal showed him lamenting that he had been acting violently towards Kathy and that he was resolved both not to follow his father's abusive example and to be a good husband. However, John and Fran Morgan, close friends of Whitman's, later told the Department of Public Safety that he had confided in them that he had struck Kathy on 3 occasions. Whitman purchased binoculars and a knife from Davis Hardware, as well as Spam from a 7-Eleven store. He then picked up Kathy from her summer job as a bell operator, and they went to a matinee before meeting his mother for lunch at her job. Around 4 p.m., they went to visit friends John and Fran Morgan, who lived in the same neighborhood. They left at approximately 4:30 p.m. so that Kathy could leave for her 6 to 10 p.m. shift that evening. At 6:45 p.m., after Kathy had left for work, Whitman began typing his suicide note, a portion of which read, "I do not quite understand what it is that compels me to type this letter. Perhaps it is to leave some vague reason for the actions I have recently performed. I do not really understand myself these days. I am supposed to be an average, reasonable, and intelligent young man. However, lately, I cannot recall when it started. I have been a victim of many unusual and irrational thoughts." The note explained that he had decided to murder both his mother and wife, but made no mention of the coming attacks at the university. He also requested that an autopsy be done after his death to determine if there had been anything to explain his actions and increasing headaches. He willed any money from his estate to mental health research, saying that he hoped it would prevent others from following his path. To me, this is very confusing because Whitman was obviously cognizant that his actions were wrong. He was already essentially apologizing for his actions before he had even taken any. Whitman then killed his mother, Margaret. The exact method is disputed, but it seemed he had somehow rendered her unconscious before stabbing her in the heart. He returned to a suicide note, now writing by hand. To whom it may concern, I have just taken my mother's life. I am very upset over having done it. However, I feel that if there is a heaven, she is definitely there now. I am truly sorry. Let there be no doubt in your mind that I love this woman with all my heart. Whitman returned to his home at 906 Jules Street and stabbed his wife Kathy 5 times as she slept naked, leaving another note that read, I imagine, it appears, that I brutally killed both of my loved ones. I was only trying to do a quick, thorough job. If my life insurance policy is valid, please pay off my debts. Donate the rest anonymously to a mental health foundation. Maybe research can prevent further tragedies of this type. He wrote notes to each of his brothers and his father and left instructions in the apartment that the 2 canisters of film he left on the table should be developed, and the puppy Scotchy should be given to Kathy's parents. At 5:45 a.m. on August 1st, 1966, Whitman phoned Kathy's supervisor at Bell to explain that she was sick and could not make her shift that day. He made a similar phone call to Margaret's workplace about 5 hours later. Whitman rented a dolly from the Austin Rental Company and cashed $250 worth of checks at the bank before returning to Davis Hardware and purchasing an M1 carbine, explaining that he wanted to go hunting for wild hogs. He also went to Sears and purchased a shotgun and a green rifle case. After sawing off the shotgun barrel while chatting with postman Chester Arrington, Whitman packed it together with a Remington 700 bolt action hunting rifle, the M1 carbine, a 6mm Remington rifle, 3 pistols, and various other equipment stowed between a wooden crate in his marine footlocker. Before heading to the tower, he put khaki coveralls on over his shirt and jeans and under a green jacket. Once in the tower, he also donned a white sweatband. Pushing the rented dolly carrying his equipment, Whitman met security guard Jack Rodman and obtained a parking pass, claiming he had a delivery to make and showing Rodman a card identifying him as a research assistant for the school. He entered the main building shortly after 11:30 a.m., where he struggled with the elevator until employee Vera Palmer informed him that it had not been powered on and turned it on for him. He thanked her and took the elevator to the top floor of the tower, just beneath the clock face. Whitman then lugged his trunk up 3 flights of stairs to the observation deck. When he found a receptionist named Edna Townsley, he knocked her unconscious with the butt of his rifle and concealed her body behind a couch. She later died from her injuries. However, this did not stop Whitman from shooting her with his shotgun post-mortem. Moments later, Cheryl Botts and Don Walden, a young couple who had been sightseeing on the deck, returned to the attendance area encountering Whitman, who was holding a rifle in each hand. Botts later claimed that she believed that the large red stain on the floor was simply varnish. Whitman and the young couple spoke briefly, and the couple left the room. When they were gone, Whitman barricaded the stairway. Now, Whitman was about to start a non-discriminatory annihilation of anyone unfortunate enough just to be in this area. So why, when he encountered Cheryl and Dawn, did he just let them leave. His behavior seems very erratic at this point. Shortly afterwards, two families of tourists were on their way up the stairs when they encountered a barricade. Michael Gabor was attempting to look beyond the barricade when Whitman fired his shotgun at him. Whitman continued to shoot at the families as they ran back down the stairs. Mark Gabor and his aunt Marguerite Lamport died almost instantly. Michael and his mother Mary were permanently disabled. The clock tower shooting was well thought out by Whitman. He placed different firearms at different points around the clock tower, so when people looked up at the tower during the siege, they believed that there were multiple shooters all around the tower deck. From this point, Whitman's assault would last a tormenting 96 minutes. The first shots from the tower's outer deck came at approximately 11:48 a.m. A history professor was the first to phone the Austin Police Department after seeing several students shot on the South Mall Gathering Center. Many others had dismissed the rifle reports, not realizing there were actual gunfire. Eventually, the shootings caused panic and news spread, and after the situation was understood, all active police officers in Austin were ordered to the campus. Other off-duty officers, sheriff's deputies, and Texas Department of Public Safety officers also converged on the area to assist. Once Whitman began facing return gunfire from the authorities, he used the water spouts on each side of the tower as loopholes, which allowed him to continue shooting largely protected from the gunfire below. And this is Texas, so by this time the army assembling below the clock tower had now grown to include civilians who had brought out their own personal firearms to assist police. Ramiro Martinez, an officer credited with neutralizing Whitman's threat, later stated in his book that the civilian shooters should be credited, as they made it difficult for Whitman to take careful aim without being hit. Police lieutenant and sharpshooter Marion Lee reported from a small airplane that there was only one sniper firing from the parapet. The plane circled the tower trying to get a shot at Whitman until it came under fire and was forced to retreat. Whitman's choice of victims was apparently indiscriminate, and most of them were shot on Guadalupe Street, a major commercial and business district across from the west side of campus. Efforts to reach the wounded included an armored car and ambulances run by local funeral homes. Ambulance driver Morris Holman was responding to victims on West 23rd Street when he was shot in a leg artery. Another ambulance driver quickly attended to Holman, who was then taken about 10 blocks south of UT to Brackenridge Hospital and the only local emergency room. The Brackenridge administrator declared an emergency, and medical staff raced there to reinforce the on-duty shifts. Following the shootings, queues at both Brackenridge and the Travis County Blood Bank stretched for blocks as people hurried to donate blood. Police Officer Connor and DPS Agent Cohen remained inside the university to cover the windows on the southeast and northeast sides of the reception area. Meanwhile, three other officers, Ramiro Martinez, Houston McCoy, and Jerry Day, took hastily deputized citizen Alan Crum up toward the observation deck. Martinez and McCoy, armed respectively with a .38 revolver and a shotgun, went out onto the observation deck, proceeded to the northeast corner of the deck, and spotted Whitman seated on the floor of the northwest corner, watching the southwest corner for any signs of police. Which one of the officers actually killed Whitman has been disputed. Both claim responsibility. McCoy fired his shotgun twice, and Martinez fired 6 rounds from his revolver, neutralizing Whitman, before taking the shotgun from McCoy and approaching the limp Whitman and firing again, point blank, into his face. Day then took the green towel that Whitman had brought with him and waved it to those below, indicating that the sniper had been killed. Although Whitman had requested cremation in his suicide note, this was not carried out. Whitman and his mother shared a funeral service officiated by Father Tom Anglem at his home parish of Sacred Heart in Lake Worth. Due to his status as a former Marine, Whitman had a casket draped with an American flag for his burial in Section 16 of the Hillcrest Memorial Park in West Palm Beach, Florida. Now, I do want to honor those killed on this day. They include Margaret Whitman, who was killed in her apartment, Kathy Whitman, killed while she slept, Edna Townsley, the receptionist, Margaret Lamport, killed by a shotgun on the stairs, Mark Gabor, killed by a shotgun on the stairs, Thomas Ekman, with a shoulder wound kneeling over Claire Wilson. Robert Boyer received a back wound. He was a visiting physics professor. Thomas Ashton received a chest wound. He was a Peace Corps trainee. Thomas Carr received a spinal wound. Billy Speed, a police officer, was shot in the shoulder and chest. Harry Walchuk, a doctoral student and father of 6, was also killed. Paul Sontag was shot through the mouth. He was aged 18 and hiding behind construction. Claudia Rutt was age 18 and killed helping her fiancé Sontag. Roy Schmidt was an electrician and shot outside of his truck. Karen Griffith received a chest wound. She was age 17 and died a week later in the hospital, including her unborn child. David Gunby survived the initial shooting but required lifelong dialysis as a result of his injuries. More than 30 years after the shooting, he announced he was quitting dialysis and died within a week as a result, making him Whitman's final victim. Aside from those killed on this day, there were 31 others who were also wounded. An extra issue of the Houston Chronicle was released within 2 hours of the shooting. Together with the Watts riots of the early 1960s, Charles Whitman's shootings were considered the impetus for establishing SWAT teams and other task forces to deal with situations beyond the normal police procedures. It also led President Lyndon B. Johnson to call for stricter gun control policies. After the tragedy, the tower's observation deck was closed for 2 years, reopening in 1968. However, after several suicides, it was closed again in 1974 and remained closed until September 15, 1999. Access to the tower is now tightly controlled through guided tours that are scheduled by appointment only, during which metal detectors and other security measures are in place. Repaired scars from bullets are still visible on the limestone walls. Houston McCoy was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder in 1998 by Dr. Mink of the Department of Veteran Affairs in Waco, Texas, who related the diagnosis to the tower tragedy 3 decades earlier. As of 2007, he is living in Western Texas. Ramiro Martinez became a narcotics investigator, a Texas Ranger, and a Justice of the Peace in New Braunfels, Texas. In 2003, Martinez published his memoirs entitled They Call Me Ranger Ray, From the UT Tower Sniper to the Corruption in South Texas. On November 12, 2001, David Gunby died of long-term kidney complications from a wound he received while on the South Mall. He had been born with only one functioning kidney, which was nearly destroyed by Whitman's shot. After the prospect of losing his eyesight, he refused further treatment and died shortly thereafter. The Tarrant County Coroner's report listed the cause of death as homicide, and so David became Whitman's final victim, dying 35 years later. To this day, the University of Texas in Austin school shooting is still ranked in the top 10 school shootings for victim counts. So, was the tumor in Whitman's brain responsible for this horrific act? Or was his collective experience on this earth responsible for this tragedy? What do you think? What secrets did Whitman take to his grave so long ago? I'm John Dodson, and this has been The Secret Sits. Audio engineering by Gabriel Dodson. Original artwork provided by Tony Lay.